shady.
Hello, everybody, and one more week of the Alite Show, starring a new guest that everybody's going to be excited about seeing and hearing from. It's Jimmy Hoffa's driver, Marvin Elkin. Hello, Marvin. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
It's a pleasure. We're excited to see you and have you on. This episode is sponsored by Private Internet Access, America's #1 virtual private network, or VPN. Even if you use incognito mode, your internet service provider is storing your browsing data, and many times even selling it. But Private Internet Access, or PIA, can help. PIA encrypts and reroutes your internet traffic through one of its own servers, hiding your data from your internet service provider or network administrator. And with servers in over 75 countries, you can get unrestricted access to geo-block content around the world. PIA comes with easy-to-use apps and browser extensions for all devices, a rock-solid privacy policy, open-source security, advanced customization settings, and it was just ranked the fastest VPN in the world by PC Mag. And if you sign up with PIA right now, you can take advantage of a special deal only for the Alite Show with Mscs Media listeners. Special deal available right now only by using the link www.privateinternetaccess.com/JohnAlite. That's www.privateinternetaccess.com/JohnAlite. You can get a complete digital privacy for less than $2 a month and 4 extra months for free. Means only $1.98 a month at 83% off. That's so much more inexpensive than virtually every other VPN on the market. And if you get it right now, you could take PIA 30-day risk-free challenge. You could try it for 30 days and see if you like it. If not, you'll return it all for a full refund. So click on www.privateinternetaccess.com/JohnAlite and try out the best VPN on the planet, completely risk-free. That's www.privateinternetaccess.com/JohnAlite and try out the best VPN on the planet, completely risk-free.
Beg your pardon?
Excited to see you.
Thank you. Good
So
to be here with you guys.
we really appreciate you coming and talking to us and history of the Mafia, and this is something everybody's been looking forward to for a long time, the Jimmy Hoffa story. I'd like to ask you my first question. When did you first become familiar with organized crime, and what led you to the involvement in this world?
I first got involved with the organized crime when I was 18, when I was working at the Cuba Cabana in New York. And then they offered me a job I enjoyed. I was a busboy there, and I really liked it a lot because I liked the people that came. I liked the job. But then they told me it was owned by Lou Walters, Barbara Walters' father.
Wow.
And it was on a Wednesday, and Tony Salerno, who was the liaison between the Mafia and the Teamsters Union, told me Friday was my last day. As of Monday, I'm going to be the driver for Mr. Hoffa.
What year was that?
What happened was I was a busboy there, and Mr. Hoffa's associates, Frankie Carbo, Linky Palermo, Tony Salerno, and Tony Pro Provenzano used to come in about 4 or 5 nights a week to the Copa because they didn't pay. And they used to scare people. People knew who they were, and they used to get a kick out of scaring them. But I knew they were just having fun, and they were big tippers. So when other people ran away from them, I ran towards them. And I gave them fantastic service, and I always made sure they had more booze than they paid for. and they liked me as a busboy. I was very good to them. So it was on a Wednesday, and I was busy working, and Tony Salerno said, "Hey, little Jew boy, get over here." I came over, and I said, "Yes, Mr. Salerno." He said, "We spoke to Lou Walters. Friday's your last day here." I said, "Why? I'm trying so hard to do a good job." "Why?" "Because as of Monday, they said you're going to be Jimmy Hoffa's driver." I didn't know Mr. Hoffa, but I heard a lot about him, and I heard that people that get him mad, either people that get him mad or people that don't do what he likes properly, can get hurt. So I got very nervous. So I said, "I don't want to be Jimmy Hoffa's driver." So Mr. Salerno said, "Nobody's asking you." I said, "Yeah, but I'm a Canadian." They said, "That's the whole thing. Hoffa's driver has just been drafted into the Army. And you being a Canadian, we don't have to worry about that. So that's why we want you to do the job." My answer was, "I don't know the roots of the city at all. I don't know New York at all. I haven't been here too long." And they said, "Hoffa is a creature of habit. He goes to the same places all the time. So we'll show you where. And once you know the first time, you'll know all the time." They said, "Saturday, be ready. Somebody's going to pick you up and we're going to take you out." I was very nervous about it, the whole idea. I called the foster home I used to live in and told them I was very nervous about my new job. Could I come home? They said, "Well, you can't. Your room has been rented out. No place for you here." I thought I'd go to my real home, and I called and I was told, "No, I can't come home." Saturday, they picked me up and they took me to a clothing store and they bought me some blazers, some slacks, and some sport shirts, and a coat and a hat. And then they took me to a jewelry store and they brought me this chain, this rope chain. Hoffa's drivers were not allowed to wear shirts and ties. You had to wear a sport shirt so this chain was visible and showed you that you were his slave. And then they took me and they showed me where I would get the car. It was a beautiful big black Cadillac with heavy plating on it. And they took me to LaGuardia Airport. Mr. Hoffa was a very strong man emotionally. He loved his union and he loved his family. Every Friday, he went back to Detroit to be with his family, and he came back to New York on Monday to run the union. They took me to LaGuardia and showed me where I would pick him up. On Monday, I got the car, I drove to LaGuardia, and I drove to where they told me Mr. Hoffa would get off the plane. And they showed me pictures of Mr. Hoffa. I saw Mr. Hoffa get off the plane. I pulled the car over and I got out. I opened up the door and I said, "Good morning, Mr. Hoffa." He says, "Are you Marvin?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Very good start. Excellent start. It's Mr. Hoffa or sir. Very good start." He got in the car. And he said, "Now, Marvin, I want you to drive over here." He showed me where to drive to stop the car. I did. Two guys came out of another car and they got into the back of the car with Mr. Hoffa. These were his bodyguards. And Mr. Hoffa said, "Marvin, turn off the car. I want to talk to you." He said, "Now, Marvin, there's rules and there's cardinal rules. If you break a rule, these guys will beat you up." And they opened up their coats to show me they were carrying guns. He says, "The rule is this. I don't want to hear snowstorm, rainstorm, thunderstorm, traffic. I don't want to hear any of that. You must never be late. After you pick me up, if conditions make us late, that's okay. but I must never be kept waiting. I'll be ready at 7 o'clock in the morning to be picked up, and you be ready. I don't want to be kept waiting. That's the rules. The cardinal rule is this: what you hear in this car stays in this car. If you ever hear something in this car and you repeat it, you won't be around until the next morning. And then we started going on our day. Now, Mr. Hoffa lived in the Lowe's Midtown Hotel. That's where Teamster headquarters were, in the Lowe's Midtown. Mr. Hoffa had an apartment there, and each of the two bodyguards had a room there, and I got a room there. Now, Mr. Hoffa was a very moral man. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't womanize. And the day was finished, I used to take him back to the hotel and he used to say, Marvin, at 9 o'clock, I'll be in the tub and then in bed. Have the car around at 7 o'clock. Every morning, I used to go and get the car. It didn't matter. That car had to be washed and cleaned, and a police officer would come in and check it for bugs, make sure that nobody was listening in on the car. And it didn't take long. I got used to the route. I knew where we were going. I knew what I had to do, and everything went along fine.
Hey, Marvin.
Excellent.
That's
Excellent.
amazing. I'm so honored.
That was question number one, and John is going to be coming up with question number two.
Question.
I just want to say something. Excuse me 1 second, if you don't mind. I am so honored to have heard those words. Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. Go ahead.
Marvin, so as...
That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Next question.
I didn't hear that.
Marvin, as you got to know Mr. Hoffa, was he a gentleman that treat you kindly, or did he always hold as a real tough
Mr.
boss?
Hoffa never spoke to me. He just yelled. Now, whenever he would yell at me, you stopped too quick. You didn't make that turn right. He always yelled. He always wanted to show me to have fear. And one of the people that he used to have in the car with him quite often was the head of the New York Mafia, Genovese Genovese. Don Vito had a reputation as being a very dangerous man, but he spoke to me like he was my grandfather, and he was very nice to me. And he used to say to Mr. Hoffa, Jimmy, don't yell at the boy. The boy's a very good boy. He's trying very hard to do a very good job for you. Don't yell at the boy. I remember one time they were in the car and Don Vito asked Mr. Hoffa, he said, Jimmy, that manufacturer that makes boys wear, he's cooperating with us? Mr. Hoffa said, no, he's not. The next day they found the guy dead. So I said to myself, I got to make sure that this guy likes me. But Don Vito treated me like he was my grandfather. He was always very nice to me and spoke to me well. Mr. Hoffa was tough, but if you listened to him and you did what you were supposed to do, which I did, you were fine.
I want to ask you, outside of the Mafia, some questions about boxing, because I know you had a very good and a special relationship with Muhammad Ali. In addition to organized crime, you would deal with a lot of times people in boxing besides Muhammad Ali. How did you get those two worlds so closely intertwined?
Now, apparently you're asking me about Muhammad Ali.
Correct.
Muhammad Ali and I became very close friends. We met first in 1965 when I went with George Cavallo for George to fight Floyd Patterson in New York. And Muhammad was there. And I was going back to the hotel to get something for Mr. Hoffa. and Muhammad was in the elevator. I introduced myself and I told him who I was and that I was Mr. Hoffa's driver, and I drove a lot of very important people. Whenever he's in Canada or New York, he needs a driver, I'd be glad to drive them and do whatever he has to do that. He said to me, I don't need a driver. I don't need you. If I need you, I'll call you. I doubt if I'll need you. And we left it at that. Next time I saw him was in Toronto when George Foreman was fighting 5 people, one after another. I saw him at Maple Leaf Gardens with his valet, Bundini Brown. I came over and he said, Marvin, I want you to know that there's other people in the elevator, so I had to act that way. I was really just kidding. I said, so was I. We became very close friends. When I turned 70 years old, he made a birthday party for me on his farm in Michigan. He gave me a beautiful gold bracelet, which I wear an awful lot. Very expensive, beautiful gold bracelet with some diamonds in it. And we became very good friends, and I remained friends with him till the end.
One question that John had for you, Marvin, was about the relationship between organized crime and boxing. Why were these two worlds so closely entwined?
Because 2 of the main guys that were with the Teamsters and the Mafia was Blinky Palermo and Frankie Carbo, and they ran the boxing in the United States. So they called the shots for who was going to fight who or what was going to happen. And that made the 2 things very close. Now, at one time, Mr. Hoffa was very nice. If I had a fight coming up, I could take off and go to the fight that I was going to fight at a little early. I used to train at Stillman's gym because Mr. Hoffa had a lot of meetings there. And I would take him there, and while we would have the meeting, I could spar and punch a heavy bag and a fast bag. Now, one time I had a fight in Miami, and I left a couple of weeks early to go to Miami to get climatized for the fight. I got a call from Mr. Hoffa. Mr. Hoffa said to me, you might get a visit from a very important man that's going to ask for a favor. If this man shows up, treat him with great respect and do what he asks. I said, well, Mr. Hoffa, help me out. Who is the man and what's he going to ask? He said, just in case he doesn't show and doesn't ask for the favor, I'm not going to tell you anything. You'll know. No, I didn't hear anything else. The day of the fight, I was getting ready, and in my dressing room, 2 guys came in, and they opened up their coats to show they were carrying guns. And they said, everybody out except the little Jew boy and his trainer. Everybody left the dressing room. After, there was just myself and my trainer, Joey Bagnato. The 2 guys were there. And then another guy showed up, not a big guy, nicely dressed. And I said to myself, this is either Meyer Lansky or
Luciano.
Lucky
So
Luciano.
he came over to me and he said, Wojciech, don't have any Moira. I'm not here to hurt you. When he spoke to me in Jewish, I knew that it was Meyer Lansky.
Sure.
So he said, Marvin, you know who I am? I said, I think you're Mr. Lansky. He says, that's right, I'm Meyer Lansky. What city are you in now? I said, I'm in Miami. He says, who do you think runs Miami? I said, I guess you do. And he said, who are you fighting tonight? I said, Rocky Castellani. He says, how are you going to make out? I said, well, he's an excellent boxer, but he's a very weak puncher. He won't be able to knock me out. If I get to him, I'll be able to knock him out, but he won't be able to knock me out. He might outpoint me because he's an excellent boxer. So Mr. Lansky said to me, Marvin, if you get knocked out by Rocky Castellani in the first 4 rounds, I'll be very happy. How much money are you getting for the fight? I said, it's $500. Put his hand in his pocket and he pulls out 500. He says, here's 500 more. Now you're getting 1,000. But you must get knocked out. It's up to you. I don't care if you get knocked out in the first, second, third, or fourth round. But you must do me the favor, and I'll be your friend. You must get knocked out within the first 4 rounds. Now, remember this.
The podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. That's HELP. www.betterhelp.com/Mafia Truths. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? You know, everybody knows I'm constantly talking about this. I think the best thing that we could talk about is therapy for anybody. There's times when I get so frustrated and I was used to my old style of behavior. And with BetterHelp, it's a phone call away. You get on the phone. No matter what's going on in your life, you don't have to travel. You make that quick call, and it could change the way you feel, and you go on with your day and your week and your month. So I'm a big advocate for it. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communication in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional therapy done securely online. There is a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas.
This service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. You won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic mastery, so if at any time you need to change therapists, no problem. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily at www.betterhelp.com/reviews. BetterHelp reviewed 261,504. Judy has helped me work through so many issues. I'm beyond grateful for Judy. BetterHelp reviewed 200,502. Andy is the man. I feel like he actually cares. He's been a tremendous help already.
Special offer for Mafia Truths. With John Alite, listeners get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Mafia Truths. Promo code Mafia Truths.
You get knocked out within the first 4 rounds. You keep that money, and we're friends. If you don't get knocked out within the first 4 rounds, you go after the 4th round, make sure you have somebody say the Kaddish for you. The Kaddish is a Jewish prayer that is said for people that are dead. The way he said it, I knew that's what he went. I discussed it with my trainer, and I had a very thick neck. I was a middleweight, but I had a very thick neck. So I decided I would put my shoulder close to my neck to hit my shoulder, but not hurt me. And then I would go down and stay down for the count. That was the plan. First round, I couldn't get Rocky to throw the punch there. Second round, I couldn't get him to do it. Third round, he wouldn't do it. Coming into the 4th round, Joey Bagnato said to me, if you don't get knocked out this round, don't look for me in the corner. I won't be there.
You better fall over.
Oh, my jaw be visible, and I let Castellani hit me square on the jaw. My knees buckled. In reality, I wouldn't have gone down. But in order to live up to the bargain, I went down. This was in Miami during the day. It was the first time I had an outdoor show during the day. It was sunny. I fell flat on my back, and the sun went in my eyes. I almost put my hand over my eyes, and then I realized what I was doing. So I pretended to try and get it up. And I turned over in my stomach, and I tried to get up. Then I fell flat in my stomach, and I let them finish the count. And I got knocked out the way Mr. Lansky wanted in the first 4 rounds. After that, Meyer Lansky came into the dressing room and said, "Thank you very much. And when you give up boxing, become an actor, you'll do very well." He did a very good job.
I'm glad you went down in the fourth
Yeah,
round.
you'll get me nervous there.
Yeah, I mean, I see that you're still here, so that's a good thing. But I'm very happy that you went down in the fourth round.
Beg your pardon?
I'm very happy that you went down in the fourth round because we still get to talk to you. We were starting to get worried over
I was
there.
very glad I went down too.
I bet.
So, Marvin, my name is Mike. I'd like to ask you a question. Are you okay with that?
Beg your pardon?
My name is Mike. I'd like to ask
A
you
new
a
voice
question.
wants to ask you a question, Marvin.
Sure.
So, a lot of people, this question needs to be asked because a lot of people are going to ask, why didn't you ask? So I'm going to ask. There are a lot of
Beg your pardon?
There are a lot of theories surrounding the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. What are your theories about what happened to him and where his body lies today?
I didn't
Amen.
hear.
Marvin,
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
what are your thoughts on the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa and where he is?
Now, in 1975, we had a big convention in Detroit. Mr. Hoffa had been in jail for a while. He just got out, and he wasn't on the slate. The man on the slate to be president was McGuigan of Boston. Mr. Hoffa showed up in Detroit, where he lived, and he had a lot of friends, and he made arrangements to be nominated from the floor to run against McGuigan. They took a poll. This poll showed that Mr. Hoffa would get over 90% of the votes. So there was no question if he got nominated and accepted, which he would win the election. The U.S. Justice Department headed by hated Mr. Hoffa. It went far beyond business. They just hated him. And Mr. Hoffa hated them. It was very personal.
Amen.
So the U.S. Justice Department came to the Teamsters and they said, if Hoffa runs and gets elected, we'll give the Teamsters as much trouble as we can. But if he does not get elected, we'll give them a lot of cooperation. So they decided to speak to Mr. Hoffa and give him a lot of money, big pension, not to run. Money wasn't important to Mr. Hoffa. He liked running the union. He turned them down, and they were very upset. I had coffee with Mr. Hoffa a few days after that, and I told him, I said, Mr. Hoffa, a lot of people are very upset that you're going to run. His answer to me was, Marvin, my people will never harm me. Now, two things were going on in Detroit at the time. The convention, and plus the fact that they were going to build the Renaissance Center Hotel. And the meeting was across the road from the Renaissance at the Omni Hotel. I was there doing my job, running errands, and driving for executives of the union. That's what I was doing. Now, they had to build the footings in concrete. Every Teamster carpenter that was in the state of Michigan, he could have been working on a 200-story high-rise or building somebody's rec room. It didn't matter what. Every Teamster carpenter was called off the job to put down the wooden planks that they poured the concrete in. And just before the concrete was poured, Mr. Hoffa was missing. Now, the FBI had 24-hour surveillance on Mr. Hoffa. But when Mr. Hoffa was picked up at an outdoor cafe, somebody either was asleep at the switch or paid to be asleep at the switch, but they did not get the license plate of the car. So nobody knows what car picked up Mr. Hoffa, but he was never seen again. Now, when the convention was over, they decided to walk across to see what's doing at the Renaissance from the Omni. And you didn't have to go outside. There was a way to go from one roof to the other. As we were going across around the other side, one of the executives turned to everybody and said, "Say good morning to Mr. Hoffa, boys." So there's no question in my mind, and I've always been certain that Mr. Hoffa is in the concrete of the Renaissance Center Hotel. I've gotten calls from members of the FBI since saying that somebody said he was in their in the driveway, parked in their driveway underneath. I said, you can dig it up, it won't be there. One guy said that he was on his farm. I told him he probably wants to get his grass cut for another. You won't find him there. He's in the Renaissance Center. Every place they've looked, he's not been there. Now, the Renaissance is now part of GM. It's a GM building, but it's as big as the city. So they haven't been able to do anything with it. But there's no question in my mind, because Mr. Hoffa went missing just before they poured the concrete in the footings and what was said. So there's no question in my mind, Mr. Hoffa got killed and was put in the concrete of the Renaissance Center Hotel, and that's where he is.
What was the man? Can I ask? What's his D? What was the man's name that said this, or was it just somebody shouted it out?
I didn't hear.
What was the man's name?
Yeah, he's gonna when I ask a question, or Mike asks a question, or John, if it can't be heard, he's gonna relay it to him. So just ask it once, and then he'll relay.
Right. So D, I want to know. So Marvin heard this from a crowd of people, or were there specific individuals that he knows said this? Like, say good morning to Mr. Hoffa, pointing at the.
He said it was an executive.
Okay.
What was the question?
D, do you understand what I'm asking?
I can barely hear you guys. I'm straining to.
Fuck. D, what did who were in that crowd of executives that said, "Say good morning to Mr. Hoffa"?
Okay. So Marvin, can you hear me?
No, yeah, I can hear you.
If you can tell them, if you can back up just a little bit, who were you with when they said, "Say good morning to Mr. Hoffa"? Just give us a little information about who you were with, who said it, and what the reaction was.
Thank you.
The person that said it, everybody was talking about it.
Just cut in again, Marvin.
It was Vito Genovese.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's incredible.
That's where the fuck.
I'm sorry, Marvin.
No, it's
Yeah.
all right.
Could you tell them again? I'm about to silence my phone. If you could just tell them again from the top.
Where were you standing?
Sentence.
Where was he standing? Where was Marvin standing when he heard this? Oh my God, I can't fucking believe I'm hearing this right now. Where was Marvin
Where
standing?
were you standing when that was said, Marvin?
It was on our way on the rooftop of the Omni that would lead us to the Renaissance Center.
Why was he on the roof? I'm sorry, I got a lot of, oh my God. Why was he on the rooftop? Why was Marvin on the rooftop in earshot of Don Genovese? Was he driving them somewhere? Were they getting into a car with Marvin? Oh my God, this is fucking...
The meetings were held at the Omni, and he was the head guy. He was running the meetings.
Who?
We just went across the road for a change of scenery. They wanted to have a look how things were going with the construction of the Renaissance.
Okay. Why were you there, Marvin? Who are you?
I was there doing my job as a driver and an errand boy. I would make sure that the big bosses got their drinks when they wanted, got their cigars lit when they wanted, and if they wanted somebody to drive them somewhere in an errand, I was there doing that. I was there strictly as an errand boy and a driver.
So this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I want to know, did they call you and say, hey, errand boy, we're going to walk across the street and we want to discuss what happened last night? This is what it sounds like.
No. Here, as me being around since I'm a kid, when guys are, some of the bosses around, they have guys that know when they walk with them. Because if they want something, Marvin's the guy to go get it. So if somebody wants a drink, he's going to snap his fingers. Marvin runs for the drink. If they want a light for their cigar, Marvin's going to light the cigar.
Okay.
So he's going to be following that crew of guys no matter what goes on.
It's like his personal assistant, basically.
Well, he said he's their errand boy.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Errand boy.
Okay, but I'm saying this, Marvin. You're there. You're the errand guy, the assistant, whatever we call them today. We call them personal assistants, right?
Yeah, that's what they're called today.
Right. So Marvin's in this personal assistance role. He's basically not just the driver anymore. He's now sort of stepped up a little bit, right?
Well, no, I'm going to tell you, being a mob guy, not exactly. When he's around as a driver, he's building confidence that everybody's comfortable with him. They're not going to ask some kid that's never been around.
Right.
But Marvin's the guy that's in everybody's company since he's a kid. So now becomes almost like a son, grandson, like Vito Genovese treated him, where there's a trust thing with them. As far as they're concerned, Marvin's ears are closed, which they're not closed.
But Jimmy Hoff is gone. So what's Marvin doing there? Now he's assistant to, wait a minute.
Well,
now he's an assistant to Genovese.
He's assistant, to the other executives.
Right.
He's still driving executives around.
Oh.
See, he's building up to the point where he's at. So, like right now, you could think, am I right, John? You would think of Marvin at this point where we're at as an associate.
Well, I'm going to use what John Gotti did. Let's bring John Gotti into this. And D, you can hear me, right?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, so John Gotti would have a lot of Marvins around. There would be Jimmy Irish that would run errands and go to the track and buy his tickets. There was Little Johnny. He would stay around, and he was the gatekeeper, cleaning the club and cleaning around and sweeping. And then you have another guy that would go get his car and his clothes, Fat Bob. So Marvin became one of these guys that became entrusted to the bosses because he was around when Jimmy Hoffa was around. And this is where Marvin stood.
So his legal job, Tommy, was driver. At this point in time, he was driver for the Teamsters boss in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
And as a driver for the Teamsters boss in Toronto, sometimes he would go to New York or Detroit to drive people around.
Okay.
And at this point in time, the Renaissance Center has been built, and it's a couple of years after the disappearance. And someone happened to say good morning to Mr.
Actually, I missed that. There's a couple of year gap.
Inside joke, because they were crossing over towards the burial site where his body was.
Okay, so I missed a piece of history there. So they're at the convention. Hoffa goes missing. That he's assigned to drive, essentially, at this point in his career, Marvin.
And this conversation is years later.
Okay, see, that years later I missed. So now Marvin is still hanging around this crew for several years as a driver for the head boss of the union boss in Toronto.
Exactly.
And Marvin's privy to come on these meetings. He basically goes to an adjoining, I guess there's a bridgeway, a walkway from the roof across the street to the Renaissance. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that is.
That would be correct.
I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I ain't never been. I'm just drawing this. I'm playing detective, as you know, guys. I was a cop, for a little bit. So, and I just want to know, we're so fortunate to have this. We're so fortunate to have this happen here, that he's in earshot of this full discussion. Basically, he's part of the discussion, or I would say a flippant remark by Vito Genovese. A flippant remark, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So he's privy to this flippant remark.
Well, because he's privy because he's in their company, and you got to remember the egos of these guys that I grew up with, and are of such, and they have a dry sense of humor.
Well, that's what makes them valuable too.
Right.
They can say, "There's Jimmy Hoffa." You can't prove.
You're not saying you killed him, but basically you're saying you had.
You know where he is.
Right.
Right. Wow.
It's like that scene in Goodfellas when he shows him the painting and he says, "Looks like someone we know."
Right.
It's an inside joke.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So here we have
It was an
Marvin.
inside joke.
Yeah.
Frankie Carbo was there. Blinky Valera was there. Tony Provenzano was there. Tommy Corrigan from Toronto was there, and that was one of the big reasons I was there, because at that time I was the driver for the Teamsters boss in Canada, who was Tommy Corrigan.
Ask him, D. D.
Yes.
Can you ask him, just because I have odd questions? I'm sorry, I'm not a scripted guy. Can you ask him if he was around the Trafficantes, that crew, because that crew was big up there?
Yeah, Miami.
So Marvin,
No, they were big up in Cleveland.
are you familiar with the Trafficante family? The
Yes.
people who are involved in the Trafficante family and what their relationship was with the bosses in New York.
There you go. Thank you.
The Trafficante family ran Detroit.
See?
So, D, my partner from Canada was Marco Zoni. He's still my friend. We own the glass company together. He lives in Tampa now. Very good friends with Trafficantes. I'm going to put a picture up with me and Marco on this, so people could see when we put this video up with Trafficante and his brother with Marco. So I'm very familiar with the Trafficante family because some of my partners were Nick Scaglione's grandson, Terry Scaglione, was also involved in my case. These are Tampa-based guys in the Trafficante family. So we'll hit some of that on our next video also of with Marvin when he comes back.
Oh, this is crazy. This is all that other shit.
Would you like Marvin to elaborate about the Trafficante family?
Yeah, he can elaborate.
Yeah,
The
sure.
Trafficante family were very powerful. They were very well respected, and they ran Detroit.
What did they tell me? Tell me is I'm not a mobster. D, tell him Mike's not a mobster. What did they run?
So Marvin, if you could elaborate just a little more to someone who knows nothing about the mafia, what was the Trafficante family and what was their role in the underworld? If you're talking to someone, say I'm someone who knows nothing about the mafia, if you could elaborate.
Mainly, they were in loan sharking and bootlegging.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you can say about that family or the people affiliated with them?
Any main hits that had to be done in Detroit were done through them. They would hire the hitman. They would pick the hitman.
Wow, Detroit.
What was their relationship, D? What was their relationship to Cuba?
What was the Trafficante's family relationship with the commission in New York?
No, with
Where
Cuba.
did they
No, with Cuba.
exist on the totem pole?
In Cuba, no, D?
They were the favorite.
Can you put this on the screen?
The favorites of Alite Genovese
Yeah.
was San Salvatore Giancana from Chicago
Giancana, that's right. Yeah.
and the Trafficante family from Michigan.
So, D, I'm trying to get this because it's
Don
something.
Vito was the head boss of New York, but everybody looked at him as being the main boss of all the dons of the United States. Don Vito was definitely by far the most powerful mafia man in the United States. Next to him were the Trafficantes and Sam Giancana from Chicago.
Yeah. So, D, you missed this question, D. Cuba. What was the relationship with Cuba, Giancana, and Trafficantes?
Marvin, are you familiar with the relationship that the Trafficantes had with Cuba and also with Sam Giancana? Is there anything in that world with those connections, with those people, that you can comment on?
The Trafficantes and Sam Giancana worked well together. They were very close together. They helped each other out, and they did a lot of business in Cuba with this. This was before Castro. They did a lot of business in Cuba. Both the mafia were very powerful in Cuba before Castro came into power.
D, were you ever in Cuba with them?
I'm sorry?
Ask him if he was ever in Cuba. Ask Marvin if he was ever in Cuba.
Marvin, have you ever been to Cuba, and have you had any firsthand dealings with any of this?
I've been to Cuba, going down when they had meetings down there.
I love this.
Just to do my job and to be an errand boy.
That's my job. I love him.
Go to the next.
How about Sonny Liston? Did he know Sonny Liston? Put on some boxing for a minute, because this is crazy. I have 4,000 questions for this man.
Yeah, Marvin had some relationship with Sonny Liston also, yeah. Marvin, can you tell us your relationship and what you knew about Sonny Liston?
Beg your pardon?
Sonny Liston. Can you tell us something about Sonny Liston?
Marvin.
What?
He knows a lot.
How did you meet Sonny Liston? What was your impression of him, and what was his role in the underworld?
Sonny Liston,
Doing after.
outside of the ring, was a fun guy. We were friends. And he, besides being a great heavyweight fighter, was a muscle man for the Teamsters and the Mafia. He was one of their main muscle men.
That's right.
Now, when Sonny Liston came to Toronto, he was picked up by me and taken to Maple Leaf Gardens where George Chabella was fighting, because they were supposed to fight each other. Sonny Liston was supposed to fight George Chabella. So I picked up Sonny and I drove him to Maple Leaf Gardens where he was introduced in the ring. Now, Sonny Liston got into an argument at a banquet with Meyer Lansky. I heard about it. I told Sonny Liston to make up with Meyer Lansky. He could get hurt. He was a very bad man to get bad problems with. And it wasn't long after that Sonny Liston was found in a hotel room where he was dead by drugs. Drugs were injected into him. Now, everybody knew that Sonny Liston at weigh-ins, before weigh-ins, he was scared of needles. He didn't want to take needles. So these drugs were injected into him. There was no question that it was done to Sonny Liston to kill him. He didn't take them by himself because he was scared of needles.
So he had an argument with Maya, and he ends up dead the next day.
We had a lot of laughs together.
That's pretty much how
I liked them.
That's pretty quick.
D, can you ask Marvin, in the early 1980s, Marvin became an informant for law enforcement. How did that come about, and why did Marvin agree to do this? And Marvin, I really appreciate your time.
Oh, my God.
D, did you hear me?
So, Marvin,
Thank you.
if you could tell us, without going into great deal, without telling the whole Neil Cameron proverb story, if you could just tell us,
D,
how is it that you became an informant for law enforcement, and what stands out in your mind about the time you spent as an informant for the OPP?
Now, what happened was this. I was a driver for the greatest con man in Canada, Neil Cameron Proverbs. Neil Cameron Proverbs beat one of the wealthiest Jewish families in Canada, the Tenenbaums, for $80,000. And the old man Tenenbaum's son-in-law was Bobby Kaplan, the Solicitor General of Canada. And due to the fact that I was his driver, I was arrested. I heard the police were looking for me, so I hightailed it to Calgary, Alberta.
Oh, I know Calgary.
And the police told the calls to my home. They didn't have to get a warrant to trace them. They told them, and they saw there were calls coming from a hotel in Calgary, and they were made to my home. So they picked me up in Calgary, and they said, there's a warrant out for you by the Attorney General of the province of Ontario to send you back to Ontario. I said, why? They said they didn't know. Now, I was brought before a justice of the peace, and he had on his desk his name. His last name was Shapiro. So he said, how are you, Mr. Elkin? I said, I'd be a lot better off if I was in the synagogue. He said, so would I. I'd be a lot better off also.
Just quick, one sec. What was the name of the hotel? D, what was the name?
Pardon?
What was the name of the hotel? D.
In Calgary?
Yes.
The Calgary Inn.
The Calgary, that's famous now.
They should give you a kick from whatever money they make. D, can you ask Mr. Elkin that, please?
He said it. Calgary Inn.
Oh.
So if you could
He did.
continue telling the story, Marvin.
No, that's okay.
And if you could just tell us what your work as an informant was, what was it you did for the OPP, and some of the cases you were involved with.
Now, the OPP picked me up and they took me back to Toronto, and they had a meeting with me, and they told me if I would testify for them against Proverbs, they would see that I would not be incarcerated. On the stand, Proverbs had a lawyer, and during the trial, a man stood up. His name was Dave Humphreys. He was the leading criminal lawyer in Canada. And he said to the judge, Hugh Locke, said, this was about 11:45. He said, when this man is being cross-examined, I'm taking over and I will cross-examine him. Now, the judge said, as a court, he said, I want to study the paper that he signed for the OPP. Now, the judge said, it's a quarter to 12, so we might as well wait, and we'll break for lunch till 2:00, and that's when we'll come back and you can cross-examine him. As I was leaving the courtroom, I had to pass by Dave Humphreys. Dave Humphreys said to me, Marvin, I'm going to rip you in pieces. You never took a beating in the ring like I'm going to do to you, and you'll never take one. I'm going to rip you to shreds. I went down the street from the courthouse to the Sheraton Center Hotel, and I had lunch. For lunch, I had a chicken sandwich and 3 double or martinis on top. So I came back feeling relaxed. I ran into a lawyer by the name of Doug Listerman, who later became a judge. And he said to me, it's all over Bay Street. You're going to be cross-examined by Humphreys. He said, Marvin, Humphreys doesn't care about Proverbs. He doesn't care about the case. He doesn't care about you. What he's going to do is try and embarrass you and catch you in lies. He catches you in one lie, you're finished. Now he's going to ask you questions, and he's going to have papers behind his back that the truth is going to be. If he catches you in one lie, you're finished. Everybody knows who you are anyway. Don't let him catch you in a lie. Then I went into the courtroom, and the judge reminded me I was still under oath, and Dave Humphrey started to cross-examine me. He said to me, in such and such a year, did you do this? I said, yes, I did. He looked shocked. He said, in such a year, did you do this? I said, yes, I did. And he asked me another question. I go, yes, that's it was me. I did that. So he said to me, you also took money from Proverbs. I said, correct. He says, how did you feel when you were doing these things? I says, I was fine. I was telling them lies. He says, how did you feel telling them lies? I said, I felt terrific. He says, how come? I says, because I was drunk. So Humphrey says to me, are you saying the devil made you do it? I said, well, your client bought me the drinks. If you want to kill him, if you want to call him the devil, that's up to you. And he started questioning me again. And I said to him, it was this way, Dave. He said, don't call me Dave. I said, why did you change your name? The courtroom burst out laughing. Now I was relaxed and I was enjoying the cross-examination. Then he asked me other questions, and I told him that I did these things because it made me feel good. And after it was over, the head of the OPP running that, Inspector Fern Savage, who was a very unemotional person, gave me a hug and thanked me for the way I handled Humphreys. Now, about a year later, there was a big dinner honoring the head of the head Crown Attorney, Roy McMurtry. And the lawyer bought a table. They were very expensive and invited me as his guest. When I got there, at the table was Dave Humphreys, who had, now the next day after I testified against Humphreys, the front page of the Toronto Star wrote, rapid speaking Elkin beats Humphreys to the punch every time. I got word that Humphreys was very upset with me about that. Now, Humphreys after that was appointed a judge, and I had to go to court on another situation and get a remand. My lawyer, who's passed away since, Harvey Salem, had made arrangements with the chief Crown Attorney, Henry Bull, to get a remand. I would just go to court for a remand. When we got to court, he said, they're having trouble finding an empty courtroom, but it doesn't matter who we go in front of, because it's strictly for a remand. It's all been arranged. The only judge that was available was Humphreys. We got into the courtroom. I said to my lawyer, I said, are you crazy? I can't go before Humphreys. The man hates me. He said, it doesn't matter. The deal is made strictly for a remand. We got into the courtroom. Humphreys says, Mr. Elkin, I see Mr. Elkin here. Is Mr. Elkin in custody? My lawyer said, he's not, Your Honor. He's here strictly for a remand. Well, I sort of think that Mr. Elkin should be handcuffed and put into custody. And my lawyer said, Your Honor, I already made an arrangement with the chief Crown Attorney, who is an associate of yours. So he said, all right, we'll go ahead. And they gave me the remand. Now, at that dinner, Humphreys didn't look at me and I didn't look at him. And somebody said at the table, why don't you two guys go over that case again where Humphreys was cross-examining Mark? And it had the courtroom laughing their heads off. We did it. Before we knew it, all the tables was emptied. They were around our table, and Roy McVictory himself came over, and they were all laughing their heads off at the stories we were telling, which happened in that courtroom.
Now,
Humphreys
Marvin,
and I were invited to a lot of different dinners just to tell the stories. They call it the Dave and Marv Show.
I can imagine, because this is quite the show, and it's been quite the
Tell
show.
the story.
Do you have any?
yeah, I got one more. D, can you please ask Mr. Elton, looking back, what would he have done differently?
Let me see if I can just get him to elaborate on the informant just a little bit more and more precisely.
Sure.
If I can. Marvin, can you hear me?
I'm with it. Now, when I worked,
Can you tell us this, Marvin? Can you tell us, why did you personally choose to be an informant? Why did you choose to
what happened was that
do that work
the
involved?
Lock 'em up.
the OPP were so impressed with the way I testified against Humphreys, and they knew all of my connections. They decided to ask me to become an informant. Now, there was a deal. These people came into town. They had a deal with counterfeit money. They offered me to be part of the deal, and they offered me the lowest amount. I was going to take all the chances that I was getting the lowest share. I got hot at them. So I called the police officer.
Fringe guy here.
His name was Detective Al Robinson, who specialized in informants,
Drove.
and told him
What a boy.
I would testify against them for him. I did such a great job that the OPP decided to turn me into a full-time informant. Now, I worked for the Ontario Provincial Police, but they loaned me out to other forces such as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the FBI.
You rode a horse?
Mexican
D, did he
terror.
ride a horse? Hey, D, did Marvin ride a horse?
Can he ride a horse?
Well, he worked for the mounted police, I heard.
You're going to fuck.
Can I ride a horse?
Going right to hell.
Not well enough to be
He's
on
going
a
right
horse.
to hell.
You said you worked for the Royal Mounted Canadian
So
Police.
he was going on about the different branches of law enforcement.
Yeah, I know, D. I'm
He
trying.
was heading out to the field.
We know, D. I'm
Now-
So
playing,
Marvin,
playing
do
with
you want to hear that again, Tommy?
Yeah, if you could just, no, that's okay.
Yeah, no,
if
no.
you could
No,
just
we're
ask
good.
Mr. Elton, looking back at everything, what would he have done different?
Or did he love his life?
So looking back at your life, Marvin, looking back at your life, what choices would you make differently? How would you have lived your life differently?
The only way I would have lived it differently is I wouldn't have gotten involved in organized crime. Being an informant, I did what I knew how to do, and my family liked the idea that I was working for law enforcement, not against it. Wherever I went, when I went to England to work for Scotland Yard, now, one situation that happened was this.
Scotland Yard.
I was in Mexico where I was working for three forces: the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Mexican Federales, and the FBI. It was a big drug deal where the Mexicans were sending drugs across the water
I want to ask one.
to the United States. And I had become close friends because of my reputation with members of the Mexican mob. They became my friends. Now the big meeting was coming up where they were going to discuss how they were going to ship the drugs across the water from Mexico to the United States. I had a meeting at the Federale headquarters with an officer from the Federales by the name of Pepe and an officer from the FBI by the name of Museri. Museri said to me, Marvin, this meeting is very important. We're bringing in the top wireman from Washington, D.C. that the FBI has got. He'll be well wired up so he can hear everything. The federale and superintendent said, are you crazy? They'll pat him down and they'll kill him right away. As soon as they see he's carrying a wire, they'll kill him. So they said, but they like him. They said they don't like themselves. They don't trust themselves. They'll find him and kill him. They said, well, he'll be wired up. As soon as we hear there's trouble, we'll go in and get him. He says he's going to be in an apartment building 25 stories up. How will you get him in time? So the federale inspector said, this is Mexico. I'm got the final shot. Marvin, concentrate, concentrate, concentrate. You're not going to go in wired. You're not going to take that chance. Concentrate everything you hear so you can tell us afterward. When I got up to the meeting, they greeted me, they shook hands with me, and they didn't pat me down. So I said to myself, I could have been wearing a wire. And they said, Marvin, we're going to have the meeting and you'll love the meeting. I said, why? He said, because we're having it in the sauna. Here's the locker room where you can leave your clothes and come into the sauna. My heart almost fell out of my mouth. The fact that I could have been wired and they would have found it because we were going into the sauna. In order to show them I wasn't scared, I started telling myself jokes. We went into the sauna, they had the meeting, and I remembered everything. I repeated it to them. They were very happy. They told me before I left that they were very happy with what I did. I was in Federale headquarters. Now, the president of Mexico at that time was Calderon. He got on TV and he said the reason we were able to grab all the boats going across was that we had an informant in there who was my man, which was a complete lie. I'd never met Calderon in my life or even spoke to him. While I was in Federale headquarters, they said their RCMP are coming to take you back to Canada. They'll have your money. They'll give it to you as soon as you cross the border into Canada, so there's no problem. While I'm there, the receptionist says, Marvin Elton, you're wanted on the phone. I pick up the phone, and then another lady says, Mr. Elton, hold on. President Calderon wants to talk to you. My knee started to shake. The fact that the president of Mexico wanted to talk to me personally. Mr. Calderon got on the phone. He said, Mr. Elton, you're a very brave man. You've done a wonderful thing for your country, Canada, my country, Mexico, and for the United States. Whenever you decide to come to Mexico on a vacation, you or anybody close in your family, here's my private number. Even when I'm not president, I'll have that number. You call me and I'll see to it that you're well taken care of for no charge for transportation and your hotel stay. We went a few times, and so did my children, and he always lived up to his word.
Wow. That's perfect. I love a good free meal.
What are we doing? Is there anything else we want to go over?
Yeah, D, one more question. And it's a final question. We got to wrap up.
And ask him what he eats.
What would his advice be to young kids that are trying to go in the street? What would he say to them?
So, Marvin, if you could have a message for the youth of the world who want to go down the road that other people in organized crime have gone, what message would you have to those youths who are thinking of taking that path with their life?
Being an informant was very nerve-wracking. You were never sure if they knew who you were or what you were doing. It was very nerve-wracking. Now, I used to tell jokes to myself so nobody could notice I was nervous.
One moment, Marvin. One moment. Did you hear the question? What would you tell kids who want to live a life of crime? Do you have anything that you could tell children, teenagers who are thinking about a life of crime? What message would you have for them?
Don't take a life of crime, because you have to take steps like maybe being an informant to save yourself, and that's very nerve-wracking. If I could take it all back again and go back those many years, I would not have taken a life of crime. I was sorry I took the job. I should have fought harder and not taken the job as Mr. Hoffa's driver that led to many other things and led to me becoming an informant. A life of crime was very nerve-wracking. Being an informant was more nerve-wracking. My advice would be stay out of crime if you can. Do your best. I should have tried harder.
All right, Mr. Elkton, thank you very much for your time. I don't know how you have the memory that you do. What do you eat? How do you have such a good memory at your age? What do you eat? What's the trick? If you could ask him that, D, and then we're very thankful for his time, and we'll let him go.
Did that work for you guys?
Oh, it was great. Really appreciate it. And incredible human being. And we really appreciate, and it was an honor having him on and discussing the old-time gangsters, Jimmy Hoffa, his belief of where Jimmy Hoffa was buried, and things like that. It was really
Would you, one thing that he didn't tell you, I don't know if you want to get it real quick, but Albert Anastasia, do you want to get an Albert Anastasia soundbite?
Yeah, give us something on Albert Anastasia. 100% we'd like
Albert Anastasia was...
Sorry, Marvin, wait just one moment so we're not talking over you. 3, 2, and go.
Albert Anastasia was a very bad person. In my career, I met many bad people. Nobody as bad as him. Now, Albert Anastasia loved loaning money to people, small amounts of money to people that he didn't mind not getting back, so they couldn't pay him, so he could have them hurt. He loved hurting people. Now, Albert Anastasia had a meeting with Mr. Hoffa. They decided to have the meeting in New York at Gambinoes barber shop. It was a big barber shop, 25 chairs, and they were going to get their haircuts on chairs next to each other and have the meeting. Now, when I worked for Mr. Hoffa, he sent me to Ecuador to a special school. They don't teach you how to drive better or fight better. They teach you how to look out for things. Because the wealthy in Ecuador were scared of kidnapping. With a terrific education, I became very close with the instructor. So close that when my daughter got married a few years later, he came in from Ecuador to the meeting. Now, when I drove Mr. Hoffa to the barber shop for the meeting with Albert Anastasia, I said, Mr. Hoffa, I don't like what I see. He said, what's bothering you? I said, I see a car down there I've never seen it here before. There's a station wagon down the street I've never seen it here before. He says, well, we paid to send you to school in Ecuador. What's your advice? My advice, Mr. Hoff, is you don't go in. He says, you don't think so? I said, no, there's problems. Doesn't look right to me. So he said, drive in the parking lot and see if Anastasia's car is there. Anastasia's car was there. He said, phone him. Now, they didn't have cell phones in those days, but I had a phone in the car. I had a large area along the trunk of the car. I had a phone in the car.
Remember those?
I phoned the barber shop, and I asked to speak to Albert Anastasia. He got on the phone. I said, Mr. Anastasia, this is Marvin, Mr. Hoffa's driver. I don't like what I see. It could be trouble. I'm advising Mr. Hoffa not to come. He says, I don't need any little Jew boy that worked with the Italians, and the Italians then threw back to the Jews, telling me what to do. If Hoffa doesn't want to come in, that's up to him. But I'm here. A little while later, 4 guys came into the barber shop. 2 of them pumped 8 bullets into the back of Anastasia, killing him. The other 2 pumped 8 bullets into the empty chair where Mr. Hoffa was supposed to be, but he wasn't there. The next day, the paper said, Hoffa's driver outwits hitmen. Now,
Perfect.
Good for you, Marvin.
Wow.
I was very proud of myself.
Hell yeah. You earned your
should
pay.
be. Absolutely.
He earned his pay that day.
What are you talking about? He says, the fact I didn't let you go into the barber shop. He says, that was your job.
That was your job.
We sent you to Ecuador to learn these things. You didn't pay for it. We did.
What
If you'd have let me go in, then you would have been doing the wrong thing. You didn't do anything great. You just did your job.
prick.
Marvin,
Did we get it, guys?
yes, it was incredible, and I really appreciate what he's done, what you've done. We appreciate his family, his daughter. We want to give our best to him, and Happy New Year, Healthy New Year, success for his family and for yourself, D, and really appreciated everything, and the interview was fantastic.
Thank you, D, and thank you, Mr. Elkton, for your time. It was very good, and I hope to see you again.
What an honor. What an honor.
We
Thank
got
you
plenty
very much.
more for you if you're bored any day.
Really appreciate it, guys. We'll be in touch for sure, and
I'd love to have you back.
I'd love to have you back.
Audio is low, but it was our pleasure, my pleasure, and look forward to seeing it up on YouTube.
Thank you.
Okay, D, could you just
Yeah.
ask Marvin to just state my name is, and I was Jimmy Hoffa's driver?
We already did that.
You did that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. They said they got
Yep.
that
You
right.
hear me,
Good.
Mark?
We're good.
They already
I
got it.
hope
They
you
already
got.
got it, D.
I hope you guys were satisfied.
We are. Thank you very
kidding me?
much.
We love you.
D, we're
You,
good. We're good. Thank you very
Marvin?
much. Hope to see you guys. Hope to see you guys again.
I
and
want to
once
thank
better
you for
stuff.
having me on.
Oh.
And David, you're a great friend. Thank you for being the middleman.
My pleasure.
Thank you, D.
My pleasure. If you could, before we sign off, Marvin, could you state your name for the camera and tell audiences that you were Jimmy Hoffa's driver? If you could just say, my name is Marvin Elkind, and I drove for Jimmy Hoffa.
Today's episode is sponsored by Private Internet Access, America's #1 virtual private network, or VPN. Even if you use incognito mode, your internet service provider is storing your browsing data, and many times even selling it. But Private Internet Access, or PIA, can help. PIA encrypts and reroutes your internet traffic through one of its own servers, hiding your data from your internet service provider or network administrator. And with servers in over 75 countries, you can get unrestricted access to geo-blocked content around the world. PIA comes with easy-to-use apps and browser extensions for all devices, a rock-solid privacy policy, open-source security, advanced customization settings, and it was just ranked the fastest VPN in the world by PC Mag. And if you sign up with PIA right now, you can take advantage of a special deal only for the Alite Show with Mscs Media listeners. Special deal available right now only by using the link www.privateinternetaccess.com/John Elite. That's www.privateinternetaccess.com/John Elite. You can get a complete digital privacy for less than $2 a month and 4 extra months for free. Means only $1.98 a month at 83% off. That's so much more inexpensive than virtually every other VPN on the market. And if you get it right now, you could take PIA 30-day risk-free challenge. You could try it for 30 days and see if you like it. If not, you're to return it all for a full refund. So click on www.privateinternetaccess.com/John Alite and try out the best VPN on the planet, completely risk-free. That's www.privateinternetaccess.com/John Alite and try out the best VPN on the planet, completely risk-free.
My name is Marvin Alton, and I was the personal driver for Mr. Jimmy Hoffa. Other people also, but the best job I had for organized crime, and the one that got me the most respect, was being the driver for Jimmy Hoffa, who I always refer to as Mr. Hoffa.
Thank you very much, Marvin. Again, our pleasure, and we really appreciate you taking the time out for us.
A lot of respect. Thank you, Marvin.
It's a beautiful morning in New York City.